Hello, this is Brian Rowe with Mythic MTG Tech and doing a wrap-up of Grand Prix Portland and talking about my favorite new modern deck, a Tempo Red, White, Blue Singleton deck. Quick side note, my laptop died recently. I ended up picking up a desktop. Hopefully by this time next year, when I do a bunch of events, I will have a laptop again and I'll be able to do a little bit more active on-site live vlogging. If you are interested in contributing to the channel, please strongly consider it. I definitely appreciate the patronage, and it will help me upgrade equipment over the next year and help improve the channel generally. In the meantime, I'm spending a lot of time on Instagram because it works really well on my tablet. Please follow me on Instagram, especially if you want to see updates on trades. Here's a few of the photos I took out at Grand Prix Portland. I ran into one of the owners of Tokyo MTG, who happened to be a friend that I worked in a card shop. The card shop was Eternal Elysium many, many years ago, probably 10, 15 years in the Portland area. Just had an incredible collection of cards. I look forward to working with him in the future to upgrade some cards in several of my decks. These foil Snapcasters were just incredible looking. I also ran into Sea Sparkle Run out there. She was incredibly nice, amazing costuming for MTG. She also happened to be at Gen Con, which I have a few photos of coming up in my next recap. I definitely recommend checking out her DeviantArt profile, which has a lot of the different costumes that she's done. Very, very strong Magic cosplayer. I put on several of the trades that I did. And I kind of asked people whether they would rather be on the top or the bottom of this trade. I'm not going to tell you which side I was on, but I definitely consider these to be equitable trades. I did a lot of trading over the GP. The GP was one of the absolute best places to trade. There were lots of foils, shocks, foreign cards. In this particular trade, the Force of Wills are German, and the Delvro Secrets are foil German. Very interesting trade. It's definitely one of those where a lot of cards are going towards some very rare cards. This trade has two foreign black border duels at the top there, and then your more traditional, slightly played revised duels on the bottom. This was one of the larger trades that I had over the weekend. This is the deck that I'm talking about. It's a red, white, and blue singleton tempo aggro deck. It is a little bit like the mid-range decks, but much faster. What I really like about this deck, though, is the variety in it. There are 14 singletons. I have a whole video on singleton theory, which I will link here, but it's really what inspired this deck. The singletons were incredible. People did not expect these cards, and I'm definitely even going to be changing some of these cards as I move forward. Cryptic Command was probably my least favorite card that I played. I was actually really happy with almost every one of these singletons. People are used to studying net decks and then preparing for and crafting their game plan around what they think a net deck is. And in a format as diverse as Legacy or as diverse as Modern, there's a lot of breadth to play with the particular cards. And when you're coming up with threats, there aren't wrong threats, there's only wrong answers. And when you can get that mismatch between the threat that you're putting down and the answer your opponent has in their hand, you can win games. The charms were a big surprise to me that they did so well. Izzet Charm and Azorius Charm were both solid, and Boros Charm was just great. There were 2 times where I used this for 2 different modes. I used this for the 4 damage to close out a game, and I used it to keep one of my Geists alive. Very happy with all of these charms. Isochron Scepter was probably my MVP. I had it out in 4 games. In 2 games, it basically won me the game. In 1 game, I put it out a little bit too early against a zoo deck, and I almost got blown out in that game. There's definitely a balance in when do you put it out. With regards to zoo specifically, I definitely learned that I need to make sure my opponent is not main decking Quasalis, and if they are, they're probably going to play them on turn 2 to get the Exalted trigger in. But I learned from that. If I had waited until the Quasali had come out, I could have easily bolted it and then safely played the Isochron Scepter. Lightning Helix is by far my favorite thing to put on the Scepter. Vapor Snag, though, was a complete blowout against a Robots deck. It feels so good to return Arcbound Ravengers to your opponent's hand. I'm just super happy with this card. Yes, it is fragile. Abrupt Decay does eat Isochron Scepter. I would be very careful playing it against the green-black rock builds or the Jund builds because of that. Otherwise, though, it's a powerhouse that several decks can't deal with. The blue-red and blue-red-white decks that I played basically had Cryptic Command, and that was it. And once I had the Scepter down, I was able to keep up some counter magic and win those longer games that this deck happens to have a little bit of trouble with. Trickbind was also a house. I'm very happy with Trickbind. It won me a game against an Ether Vial, countering the put a creature into play ability. My opponent was playing directly around counter spells and it took their Ether Vial up to 4. Trickbinding it gave me the turn that I needed to attack with my Snapcaster Mage and win. I used it more than once against Tectonic Edges and once against a Celestial Colonnade. I'm very, very happy with this card overall. The split second matters. I looked at Squelch, but Squelch doesn't hit both triggered and activated abilities, and Squelch can be countered. So I'm definitely keeping Trickbind in as a singleton. I've got a second one in the sideboard for particular matchups. I did have one mistake in this build that was really big. I put in Misty Rainforest, and I'm not sure exactly why. Looking through my collection, I seem to be a little bit short on Scaldings. I thought that it might also help me bluff what kind of a deck that I was playing at the time. That was my logic for justifying it. If people think that I'm in Scapeshift or a slower combo deck, they may play differently. But Scalding Tarns should have been in the deck. There were 2 games where this really mattered. Once I was not able to fetch the basic that I needed in order to effectively play around Blood Moon. My opponent had the Blood Moon's main deck, but I was very lucky that he did not have them on the turn that I was running into issues. The second time, though, I also needed to fetch a basic when we were in a very aggressive, close battle. The 2 life could have cost me the game. Playing with the right land is extremely important. One other mistake that I would like to share, this is a mistake that both I made and more than one opponent that I played against made. Deck thinning is extremely important. I made you a separate video explaining deck thinning, but the idea is that when you use a fetch, you pull a land out of your deck, and the land that you pull out is one that you're not going to draw. So it increases the quality of your draws by 2-3% per card that you pull out of your deck. I played against a red-black burn deck, very solid player who had been to several GPs. She needed only one more burn spell to finish the game off. Pulled a fetch land, left it out. Pulled a shock land, put it into play, tapped. Pulled a fetch land, left it out. By the time that I came back and won the game, my opponent had 3 fetch lands on the table and was very unhappy over the draws. Those fetch lands could have easily grabbed the shock lands that ended up coming up and improved the draw significantly. Second thing is, this also a shift from Legacy to Modern. In Legacy, I'm used to keeping a fetch land available so that I can effectively use my brainstorms and being able to put things back. In this particular deck, there are very few reasons, especially if you have your 3 colors, unless you really need that blue for Cryptic Command, that you would not be fetching earlier. Make sure to deck thin, pay attention to exactly what you're grabbing. Fetch lands are very skill intensive, and I saw lots of mistakes made both by myself and by others in playing them all weekend. As you guys know, I purchased the Infinite Constructed bracelet and the VIP bracelet. I want to review both of those at this point. The VIP I was not overly thrilled with. Unless you were playing in the main event, you didn't actually get most of the stuff that was talked about. You only got the playmat and the water bottle along with an on-demand event ticket. Now, the on-demand event ticket basically has a value of $30. If you're doing the Infinite Constructed bracelet already, you're going to be playing in other events. So I was able to play in a few on-demand events in which I ended up winning more on-demand events, but they conflicted, so I couldn't actually play them. At the end of the tournament, I ended up just joining a sealed deck and dropping so that I could take the 6 packs. Outside of that, you had a VIP lounge. The VIP lounge was pretty desolate. It was a great place to probably sleep, but there was never anyone there. Very quiet, but you also couldn't hear the announcements for the events there. On the other hand, the Infinite Constructed bracelet was great. The cost was about $100. It got me into $150 worth of tournaments, but that was mostly because I was doing really well in Modern. I did have a standard event that I just dropped out of after round 3 because I just had a horrible deck, horrible time, but I didn't feel bad because I didn't really lose anything there, and I was able to enter into another event. I was able to walk away with over 1,100 tickets. I stopped counting at some point and started trading them away, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But this equaled at least $300 in prizes. So for 4 days of entertainment, all the tournaments that I could play in, the $100 bracelet was well worth it. Great deal. I hope to see them do this again. The prize wall was amazing. It made people really excited about playing in multiple events. It also turned the tickets that you got, which basically 10 tickets equaled 1 pack, or you could save them up to get amazingly cool stuff, into a form of currency at the tournament. People were trading tickets left and right as something that they could just pick up from someone else if they didn't have something in their trade binder that they really needed. I ended up trading most of my tickets away to pick up some Shocklands and some Snapcasters. Really nice idea, well implemented. Thank you everybody who supports the channel. I greatly appreciate it. This has been by the way, now is a great time to join the channel as a patron. We're going to be doing some cool stuff in the upcoming weeks, including some Google Hangouts.